concluding this session without killing you, boredom or fatigue. So I'll try to, provided this machinery works, we'll try to make it lighter than could be. I use this, isn't it? All right. Okay. What is the perceptual model? In fact, what is this direct access thesis, DAT? Just a very short phrasing of it. Feeling is feeling, not emotion. Feeling is essentially a perception of the value qualities, whether positive or negative, of things. Why do I say feeling and not emotions? Well, because emotions is just a subclass of a wide range of affective phenomena, and I take feeling to be the, so to speak, receptive core of any of many different affective phenomena. In the rapid German phrasing, Wahrnehmen is a sort of Wahrnehmen of perception. And the feeling core of each emotion can be described as a sort of value perception. Okay, of course, this is the main thesis of the classical phenomenologists. So I started a little bit on my chair when somebody this morning said, thanks to Goldie, we do have this. I mean, of course, Goldie, welcome with us. But, I mean, Max Scheler, Dietrich von Hildebrand, Moritz Geiger, Nikolai Hartmann, and there are a lot of many other representatives of this position. Now, more recently, in fact, this position has become a very, very popular stance, so to speak, a view from the times of McDowell, Dams and Jacobson, Mulligan, long before 2010, but I mean, Zapollet, Goldie, and Tai, and others. Okay, now, the point is, this is very popular as a view, but it has been also submitted to a lot of criticism of critics. So I found two classes of objections. One class addressing dissimilarity between emotions, say, and perceptions. This doesn't concern me so much because, of course, emotions are not very similar to perceptions. And in fact, the phenomenological theory doesn't speak directly of emotions, but of the receptive core of them, namely feeling. Anyway, I don't address this class of objections. I'll be addressing only the second one, namely the objections based relating to normativity and its own problems, since values or value properties are bearers of normativity, and normativity introduces a lot of problems in our vision of the world. There are particular objections to a direct access thesis or to a perceptual model of emotions based on the problems of normativity. Which ones? The point is, what is the status of value properties, which the direct access theory regards as directly experienced or felt? The answer to this question is or constitutes the puzzle of, say, modern and contemporary meta-ethics, which is apparently not solved by any of the available theories of value, included, they say, the direct access theory. Now, my argument runs as follows. It's true, none of the non-phenomenological approaches solves the dilemma of meta-ethics in a satisfactory way, and yet a phenomenological approach does yield a satisfactory solution. And how? not only theorized, but actually practiced. This practice will be my arguments, or an essential part of it. In fact, in this paper, the only part of it. The rest of it, I leave out to the discussion, maybe. This is the structure, the state of art in meta-ethics, and the dilemma of normative subopinions, very quickly. Second part, I mean the essential part, experiencing values, what does it mean? And here we are proposing a phenomenological exercise in this sense. And the last part, I would say, rejecting, or trying to reject non-phenomenological alternatives. The fourth part, I'll skip it in the paper, I suppose, I don't know, but probably so, leaving it up for the discussion. So I'm desperately asking you to ask me about the fourth part of it. So, first part, the state of art about values, as it is currently discussed in meta-ethics, and there's a very annoying fact, namely that meta-ethicists tend to reduce values to moral values, where, of course, things are not so simple, and in fact, from a phenomenological point of view, you wouldn't have a decent moral theory or ethics, even meta-ethics, without an axiology, without a general theory of value. But this is also not my subject today. So, what's the beginning of the whole discussion, meta-ethical discussion? Well, the beginning is Hume's well-known facts-values dichotomy, namely, there are no value features in reality which might make a value judgment true or false. There are no truth makers in reality to make a value judgment true or false. Now, the thesis is that there is no place for values among facts, and I've got here two very obvious quotations from Hume, which I suppose I might skip. From Hume to Noah, there are two sides of the value fact dichotomy. Let's call it D. And D is the thesis that there is no place for values in a world of facts. There is, so to speak, a negative side, so to speak, a human side, the reality side of the dichotomy, namely, H for Hume, value predicates do not refer to real or natural properties. And there is a positive side, the Morian side, so to speak, or the ideality side of the dichotomy, namely, value predicates refer to non-natural properties. So, the famous naturalistic fallacy argument is implied by the Morian side of the dichotomy, namely, if goodness is by definition that which makes good things good, then any analysis of goodness in terms of natural properties and gives rise to another question. Is such an end also good? For example, is the pleasure that X causes also good? Is the desire of X also good desire? And so on and so on. That's the open question argument. Now, the upshot of Moore's natural fallacy argument is the irreducibility thesis, namely, the irreducibility thesis of normative properties to natural properties, or, if you want, of ideality to factual reality. And this is, I mean, what nourishes, keeps the whole still persistent debate alive. This debate constituting the bulk of meta-ethics, which turns around this irreducibility thesis, either question X or developing X into some parts constructs. So, what is this dilemma? It's pretty well known. Either normative properties are, after all, reducible to natural properties, but then they seem to lose their normative power. Or they are not reducible supernatural world. In what sense do they exist? So there are four main views, really to make things more, simpler than they are. Namely, cutting the knot of the dilemma, or accepting one corner of the dilemma, or escaping from the dilemma. Namely, cutting the knot is non-cognitivism, all sorts of emotivism or expressivism, according to which value judgment have no truth conditions, since value predicates have no reference to reality. The second strategy, or the thesis following the second strategy, are the metaphysical cognitivisms and or realisms, coming into two ways, two sorts, naturalistic realisms and anti-naturalistic realisms. I should say the plural. Or there's the solution of escaping from the dilemma, namely constructivism. I'll argue a little bit more what I'm stating here, but it's not, I cannot argue anything at all. Okay, what about emotions? What about emotion in all that? So, the only position so far, including emotions in its theory, it's non-cognitivism of a human roots. Emotional experience is actually crucial to value judgment, but only, we will say, as Leibniz, not as Fanon, which means value judgments have no cognitive content. They merely express utterly subjective states of mind. Whereas the other three alternatives don't even take emotional experience into account. It plays no relevant role. This was about the distinction between Fanon and Leibniz. Leibniz is what is likeness. That's the only part of experience usually referred to by Humeans or by a theory of people who say what is the phenomenology of this act refer to the word likeness, okay? But there's no necessary issue of veridicality or non-veridicality because even daydreaming or imaging has a phenomenology in that sense. So Erfahrung is that subclass of experiences having an intentional opening to reality. Anyway, okay. So Erfahrung presents reality as an infinite source of information and does get reality right or wrong. That's the sense in which we speak of veridicality or not of perception. Anyway, it also allows to learn from experience. All of that wasn't really important, but it's maybe to justify, or not even, one of the concerned alternatives, the Humean one, does take a sort of experience, emotional experience, into account. The other don't. They are what one could call ersatz, theoretical construction, or strategies for coping with normative properties as opposed to faithful descriptions of them. Naturalistic realism reduces normative properties to their real foundation, i.e. natural properties, and it's pretty happy to give up ideality or intrinsic normativity. I think we will have an example maybe of a pretty naturalistic position in metaethics. The anti-naturalistic realism does explain normative properties at the price of rejecting reductions and so accepting the challenge of queerness, so Platonism, dualism, all sorts. And I regard constructivism as a form of a way of escaping the problem. It only requires that there be an intersubjective validation procedure for basic normative principles. Normativity is quite independent of the substantive content of normative properties and, a fortiori, of their experiential content. Now, what's wrong with is a methodological kind of rule, no theoretical problem about the type of things S should be addressed, but in the intuitive presence of some token or instance of S. And so the second part is an exercise of emotional perception. So let's give up all signative intentions for a while. Let's dive into experience, starting with a phenomenological exercise of visual perception. Now, there is a source to it, but I skip it. And let's go and see the things itself. You have to connect it. So, I'm sorry, this is an animation which cannot be downloaded. So you only can catch it online. And that's the reason why, okay, but our terrific Sarah made it. So, this is, in fact, as you can see, is an animation built just by exploiting some laws which I'll be talking in a while. It's composed, the thing is composed out of just 15 light spots attached to the joints and the vertical axis of a walking person. And in fact, what we see strictly depends on the pendular motions and the rhythm of swing and the relations between these motions and this swing, this rhythm. Now, there is already a very significant fact that the emerging, I mean, we don't see points, we do see some sort of unitary dynamic start. We don't really see moving points, we see and sense the walking body. It's bigger, the robust but slender figure of the walking person, his size and weight, we'll see it in a moment. Let's practice this variation. I can do it, it's got it, I hope. You see, they have disposed 5 parameters, male, female, heavy, light, and just by changing in a tiny way, as I said, the rhythm of swing, the relations between the pendular motions and so on, we go more and more male style walking, more and more and more, and in fact this is pretty visible, I think. We see a bald man, then a sheriff, then maybe a roadster or a caricature of a real macho. But the feminine side is even more striking. So it seems to go, I mean, the vigor is replaced slowly by grace, more and more gracious. But then it goes pretty seductive and pretty coquettish, and finally just ridiculous, isn't it? Okay, I promise you it's about the same on the other axis, but let's see them, heavy light. So you really, at the end of the heavy series, you have a sort of, I don't know, some sort of somebody very, very heavy, somebody wearing tons on his body, or maybe a diver with lead boats or so. And so, in a corresponding way, on the light extreme, okay. But also the nervous relaxed axis is pretty impressive. So the gait goes more and more nervous and anxious and maybe concerned, and so, and relaxed. Well, the relaxation becomes more and more visible, and certain sense of ease, serenity, laid back, and so on. The emotional, or so to speak, moods component is also very impressive. Happy, sad. So we go to an extreme of real kind of euphoria to an extreme of inertial, almost inertial depression. So that's really the end of it. And, well, what should we, yeah, please, go back to it. And, okay. Well, let's keep the sources. I mean, that's very, very interesting from a historical point of view. We have no time to. So what we see are qualified walking styles having more or less dynamic harmony. So each walking style qualifies a dynamic pattern, a gestalt of walking, a gait actually. Now, this gait, as I said, is made up of slightly different synchronic pendular motions of the light points, combined with slightly different rhythm of swing, exemplifying the principle of common faith. This is the Gestalt law, everything is based on, but doesn't matter. There was another again. What do we see or feel, in fact, exactly? And why do I speak of values? That's the point. We see expressive qualities of walking styles, okay? Now, what are expressive qualities and so on? Expressive qualities are a subclass of value qualities, namely, why value qualities? Because, I mean, they qualify walking style as more or less harmonious. In fact, we've seen they go from a range of, say, harmoniousness, both, for example, in a male vigorous way or in a female graceful way. But anyway, there are the extreme which are blatantly ridiculous, so beyond any harmony. And why expressive qualities? Expressive what? Revealing or presenting what? And this is interesting. They present a lot of properties or of actions or of agents. The gender, for example, the bodily states, freshness, tiredness, or even attitudes or physical personality traits. But on the axis, on the parameter nervous relaxed, we are presented with moods, character traits, and so on, and in the case of happy sad, with emotions or emotional dispositions. For example, exaltance. I mean, all of that has a lot to do with Thomas Cook's talk this morning on the embodiment of emotions and affective phenomena generally. Okay, to sum up, these qualities have both polarity, plus and minus, and content, materia, so the material axiology, they satisfy the condition of a material axiology. They present, in the sense of presenting phenomenologically speaking, agents and other selves. So they, in fact, what are expressive qualities particular? They are the, in a way, the formal object of empathy. Empathy is about them in order to be this direct form of social cognition, this immediate social